I want to start off. There's one of my favorite quotes from William Gibson, who's a good one for quotes.
Oh, yeah.
The street finds its own use for things, uses the manufacturers never intended. What did you learn as you democratized the tech of credit cards, of making sure that everyone had access? How were people using it in unexpected ways?
So the most unexpected use was attorneys who were taking these massive payments on Square and paying us 2.75%. And I couldn't figure out why they were using it because attorneys, at least in my country, take retainers.
Right.
And we were seeing all these retainers, and I called up one and I said, why would you pay us a percentage? Why didn't your client just write you a check? And the attorney said, the clients that I represent don't have $5,000 in their checking account,
Right.
but they do have $5,000 of credit on their credit cards. And these are, attorneys who were basically, criminal defense attorneys. And they were using our system to access the credit function of the card, and I thought that was really interesting.
Okay, so what you're seeing then is once you actually change the rules, you allow people to actually purchase services that they couldn't purchase before. Like these people maybe wouldn't have access to legal representation because they simply wouldn't have had a way of being able to pay for it.
Yeah, and it's more like speed, right? If you're in a position where you need an attorney, you probably need an attorney quickly.
Yeah.
Right? So the ability to sort of provide that instant access it was surprising to me. It was a use case that I saw, and I was like, wow, I never would have predicted that.
Okay. All right, so it was really good to get the story of Invisibly and where that's going. And I have a really good, I think it's a very on-point question. On Friday this week, the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regime, have you been getting a lot of emails, folks, from services you forgot you signed up for indicating they're changing their privacy terms? It's because there's this thing called the GDPR that will go into effect in the EU on Friday. And it basically mandates that companies must now respect your data rights, right?
Yes.
That they have to respect your privacy, they have to respect your data rights. The devil will be in the details, but everyone's at least making the right noises around this. And a lot of the reason that we're in this and that we need a GDPR is because of this original sin of content being free or content being delivered, as you point out, that there's a decreasing return for success, that success is selected against rather than selected for. You're proposing, okay, so that the publisher will be getting money from you and you will be engaging as a user in a relationship with an advertiser. How do we make sure that that relationship with the advertiser doesn't continue to be a relationship where they're basically mining us for profile data to be able to target ads at us? Or is that always going to be the deal with that? I mean, if we try to democratize this system, are we still going to have something that's looking like an entity that wants to know too much about me in order to be able to have a relationship with me?
Yes, so the interesting thing, Mark, is that too much about you is a moving target, right? So what we envision as an ideal system is one that at its base level is completely passive. In other words, you don't have to do anything and the system gets better and improves for you. But then if you choose to engage, we say, hey, look, if you are willing to trade your attention for access to content, which is essentially the bargain we're making right now. When we watch any ad-supported medium, we're essentially trading our attention on the advertisements for access to the content. So if that's a trade you want to make, we just say, okay, how do you want to make it? What do you want to trade on? So for instance, there's a lot of information about me that I don't want to trade on. Okay, I really don't want you targeting my kids.
Right.
Okay, but I'm perfectly fine targeting my wife.
Because she's grown up, she's able to make her own decisions.
She's fine. She's a lawyer. She's tougher than I am. And she's about to buy a house full of furniture, okay? So right now, if you give her furniture ads, that's a very valuable target. And I'm happy to share with the advertising world the fact that, Anna McKelvey is about to spend a bunch worth of cameras. She's going to spend a ton of money filling up a living room. Go get her, right? That's a fair trade, and that's one I choose to make. So the idea here is you give the consumers, first, an honest description of what's happening, and then second, the choice of how to play the game, and third, the choice to opt out. Because the other thing in our system, and I didn't describe the system, I don't want to make a commercial for a product that doesn't exist. The other option is to just say, look, why do I have to buy ads at all? Why do I have to see ads at all? Because I'm really sort of inefficiently trading my time for pennies. Here's $3, make them all go away. I mean, if you look at what your eyeballs earn for the people who make the stuff that you watch, you would be insulted. Like, it's so little money. You know, we're talking fractions of a penny. You read a typical news article, your eyeballs are worth 0.2 of 1 cent. Wow. Okay, I'll give you a nickel. Give me everything I want to read today. So we allow you to choose wherever on that continuum you want to be. Okay. But we have to be honest with people about it first. We have to wait until they're ready to engage, because you don't want to force anybody to do this.
And it doesn't make sense to plug the does it make sense to then just plug the audience directly into the creator, or is that where we've come into the problem? Because that the creator shouldn't be focused on that.
So I don't know what you mean by plug the audience directly into the creator. We want people selecting the media that they want, and we want that selection to have variable pricing. So in other words, if you just read something that's excellent, we need to figure out that you thought it was excellent, as opposed to something that you thought was trash that you may have spent the equivalent amount of time on. And it turns out you can get that signal off people's behaviors without having to bother them too much. And then you can use that to price the content in a way that is invisible. And we're talking about fractions of a cent here. We're talking about so little money that nobody actually cares about it. And this is actually one of the classic problems that I spent 6 weeks at the Fed trying to figure out the solution to. And that is, with a system like this, we're talking about such little amounts of money that nobody cares. Does anyone care about, like, a quarter cent versus 2 cents?
We don't even have a penny in Australia.
You just got rid of it.
5 cents is as small as we go.
God, I love this country. Like, this is, you get it, right?
Yeah.
Penny, you know.
Oh, even 5-cent pieces. I mean, how many of us actually even track those anymore? Okay, so let me ask, because you now brought it up. It's really interesting to have the opportunity to talk to someone who's actually in the Fed, because the Fed, the big central bank that sort of controls the world in some sense, I mean, this is the sort of the conspiracy theory around it, but you're an independent director. What does that actually mean in practice for you?
That means I'm the least qualified guy there.
We'll come to that in a minute, because I doubt that's the case.
No, really. So my role at the Fed is really to provide insight into the parts of the economy that I get to see.
Right.
So we're talking about some manufacturing, some training, some of the Square data. But really what the Fed does is very important. They try to maximize employment, and they try to keep currency stable. Right. That's about it. And they are a federated entity, so they're independent groups, and I'm one of 12 independent directors on one of the 12 independent groups. So we are responsible for just basically trying to make sure they have good data, and then very, very smart economists try to do their best to make decisions. And it's apolitical. So the Fed does not have, so one of the things that's wonderful about being on the Fed is you are not allowed to participate in politics.
Right, so they basically, they ring fence it for you.
Yeah, very helpful.
So I wonder about this. I was on a show here in Australia called The New Inventors, and because I have a background in computing, whenever there was anything that was submitted as an invention to the show that had a chip in it, Mark was on that show.
Oh, cool.
And I suspect that when something comes to the Fed that's a bit fintechy and a bit weird, they go, hey, Jim, got to look at it? Yeah.
What do you think about cryptocurrency? Yeah. I can do an hour on that.
So you're the Fed geek. Really?
Yeah.
Well then, but this, that's a good byline. It's a good byline.
Picturing the T-shirt.
So this brings up a really interesting question. I had the opportunity a few years ago to go to Africa. Now, Africa, of course, has been sort of in the forefront of what we would think of as modern fintech. There was a project called M-Pesa that came out of Kenya, in 2007, and I got to speak to the central bank governor who had approved the project. And he said, Mark, if we had any idea it would be that successful, we never would have let it through. And you talk about stability, you talk about making things good for a business environment, but at the same time, we have this incredibly dynamic fintech sector that is constantly turning out crazy new products and services that can affect the money supply. I mean, when the Bitcoin bubble went up, that certainly has knock-on effects in the economy. So how do you and how does a central banker balance that need for innovation, that we have to keep on moving forward, that we have to keep on solving problems with this need for stability?
Well, I mean, it's done dynamically. Okay, so you don't have, so the interesting thing about technology is it's always moving. The rate of change is increasing, and regulation is important, okay? So I'm not one of these sort of weird libertarians that sits there and says, we should have no central control. No, we want that. Like, government is really good, and I think here in Australia, particularly, you guys have a highly functional government compared to some of us.
I thought you weren't allowed to be political.
I didn't say who, and we're not broadcasting. But the point is that you want this sort of dynamic balance between regulators who pretty much know what's going on and are going to be slow, but they are going to be setting down the rules. And then you want innovators who are using the rules. Okay, so GDPR, great idea. Is it going to screw stuff up? Yes. Is it sort of half-baked? Oh, absolutely. Is it better than nothing? Yeah, it's a good start.
So do we need to then approach all of this as from a framework of saying nothing is finished, everything is in process, and we can be all right with the fact that there are problems, that things are imperfect? Is that a basic attitude? Because governments like to give out the signal that this is the solution, this is the answer. Even the Fed probably has to do that in order to sort of present an image of stability.
No, we don't do that. I'm saying flat out, we do not know why we can't get up to 2% inflation. Like, nobody knows.
Right.
The talk of the economy. Like, and we've said it publicly. The directors are like, you know.
Yeah, and
QE, we didn't know if that was going to work. Hey, it worked. You know, we're unwinding it. Hey, that's working too. Nobody knew. Flat out. But you have intelligent people making their best decisions. Okay, so the economy crashes in 2008. You have massive.
You know, we didn't have a crash here, right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
You guys are doing
just.
But ours did, you know, and we didn't know what to do. So smart people tried something new. They put $4 trillion on the balance sheet, and it worked. At least we think it worked. I mean, it seems to have done what it was supposed to do. And that's how you do it. You put these people in charge, give them good data, and then try to keep them out of politics too much so that they are able to make decisions. And it's been very positive. I've been really humbled at how intelligent and thoughtful the folks at the central bank are.
Well, this is, I mean, my impression with central bankers is they're deeply thoughtful and deeply concerned about the economy that they're managing, that they know at the end of the day that if they break the economy, then everyone gets hurt.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot, I guess, about transitioning away from advertiser models, and we're actually seeing other models. So you have the Netflix and the Spotify model, which are subscription models. Do you think that since we have that in music and in movies, it may in fact start to move into printed content in a different way than we're seeing today?
It may, except for one problem. Netflix and Spotify do not pay more for their content. So those two entities are essentially harvesting content that was created using other models. So if you actually are a musician and you try to live on your Spotify check, does anyone here is a professional musician? Does anyone here? Does anyone here sell on Spotify? Nobody. Okay. See, it doesn't work. Yeah, I mean, it's a big enough crowd. Somebody would be doing it if it worked, right? So it's not a model that rewards excellence. And unfortunately, the stuff that we want usually costs a lot of money to create. And if you look at all the content that you love right now, it's almost always supported by a legacy business model. What I mean by that is the news, hey man, maybe that's a printed page that it originates on, or at least it's an entity that has 200 years of momentum making that printed page. All that good stuff you watch on Netflix, that was supported by Hollywood box office sales and television advertising. You don't get great shows without huge investments. And so those are models that I do not think are sustainable, and I'm concerned enough to essentially dedicate my career right now to coming up with something else.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Jim McKelvey.